Greetings from two Star Trek events. What they can tell us. Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live. Wow. Boom. There with me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek. Hey, coming at you as we do every Tuesday right here for some clarity, sanity, and the big picture in Star Trek. Coming at you as we do every Tuesday, right through the heart of Trekland through Portal 47. Hey, everybody. Glad you could make it back. Let's see how our stream does today. Yeah, greetings from two Star Trek events. Well, I'm obviously not there live. I had occasion to be a part of two different events, one of them typical, one not so typical, that got me thinking about where Star Trek is today and reminding everybody, including me, about the passing parade, the passing scene. And hey, welcome. Welcome. Another Tuesday. Hopefully things are going well and sane where you are. If you're new to Trekland Tuesdays Live, if you're joining us for the first time, hang on. I'm going to talk on this soapbox for a while, and then we will take a real quick break, come back with the Parrot Analytics streaming TV top 10 ratings in the U.S., and then I will get into full bore on the chat, okay? So if you're twitching in with us right now, I'm not going to be looking right at the chat along, okay? So just buckle up, just for a little bit, okay? Would you just indulge me a little bit? I mean, I don't know. I saw my name on this show, so I thought I would take advantage. No, seriously, everybody. Good to see you. Keep popping in the chat. We got a great community. If this is your first time with us on a Tuesday, let's see what's going on, okay? What's going on with me is two, not so private events. Number one was, and I talked about it last week, I hope some of you were able to make it. If not, you can go see the replay right now, the raw replay. But Lockdown Con from my friends Neil and Jane at Halford. This is the second year. Don't know if there'll be a third year. It was born of the pandemic, like so many things, aka Life Support Live. It's live panels, unlike Comic-Con and some other places that have been pre-recorded. So we had live, and we had live chat interaction. Hey, it was a great panel. It was me, Andre Bormanis, David Allen Mack, Derek Tyler Attico, and Kelly Fitzpatrick. The first two names you probably know. Andre's science consultant for years, writer-producer, most lately, all the years on Trek, now with the Orville. David Mack. I mean, yes, he's written and authored a ton of Star Trek books. David pitched stories back in the day, has a couple of writing credits on DS9. The whole panel are old-time fans. Derek and Kelly most recently are working on the Klingon Empire sections of Star Trek Adventures, the tabletop roleplay, current iteration of Star Trek. And the topic that Neil came up with this was the Token Trek panel of Lockdown Con. And the Token Trek panel theme was, but is it Trek? Which already sounds a little friction-seeking, argumentative there, but it's a debate topic. So well, there wasn't a lot of debate. What I got out of the panel was, aside from getting to meet some new folks virtually, hopefully sometime live, was that it's not so much that people have rights and wrongs about Trek. It's everybody has their own slice of the pie. And of course, there's common groundlings, but it's not even about facts. It's more about what people have taken away. Everybody's journey with Star Trek is different, and we all recognize what the main overall picture is. But what still makes it special for everyone, and whether that's trying to describe it or just trying to describe your own journey, is what it meant to you. And sometimes these can be quantified. Sometimes it varies by era. The OG generation of TOS was all about Vietnam, was all about the green movement, the eco movement that actually bore out just a couple of years as Star Trek was canceled, was going off. Race situation, race relations, civil rights, but even more than that, Vietnam, and just the way as Star Trek got crazy, we wind up with the space hippies. Wasn't so much that at all. The first year Star Trek starts right before Vietnam blows up, as the attitudes about military and the draft are starting to go downhill. But that's at the time. I don't know if you've ever heard anybody mention this, but every Star Trek is a product of its time. It's the underpinnings: respect, truth, diversity, excitement for the future, geekery, yes, and also a penchant, hopefully, for great characters, great casting, great commentary, a great canon that's being adhered to. That's getting into my 5 C's there. But it's how that plays for individual people and individual eras. That's what struck me, because obviously we had some Next Generation kiddos there. The older of us on the panel were original series, or at least original series rerun babies. Then we had the Next Generation era. Kelly was a Voyager child, as you might expect. The thing that made the most impact. As we go on, and I'm constantly on the hunt for them, I just, it's not like we're doing the world's biggest documentary, what brought you to Star Trek, but it is part of the, yes, tapestry of why this show, why this franchise, why these series still attract a new audience, why they're still relevant, even as at the time, and to some of the earlier fans, newer iterations on the surface may not always, and they're not always perfect. No, none of the Star Treks are 100%. We know the clinkers from Next Gen and even DS9, and even the original series. We know the stinker clinkers from the time, because that's just the way the writing process is. We know the missteps. We know the retcons, even years later. We know the things that are done because the technology didn't exist. Not just how fancy can your space battle be, but what's the narrative of the story. It's something I talked about in the panel. We were talking about war and Gene's attitude about war as a storytelling trope. And I was trying to point out that the Gene of the 60s knew what the state of visual effects was. And if you're going to spend that much money telling a space battle story, that's going to drive the story, and that goes into dangerous places to get hijacked for flash and bang rather than story, because there was no such thing as spending a little bit of money on visual effects. Now with CG, you can spend a little less money on visual effects and not have it hijack the narrative. Just saying. The Gene of the 60s different from the Gene of the 80s. But that was one of my themes I got into at one point, but everybody on that panel had some important thoughts. Where it drove me in sum total, and maybe you too, was we weren't representing every square inch, every nook and cranny of Star Trek's eras, as well as all the shows, but we were certainly mindful of them. Aside from Star Trek meaning something slightly different to everyone, it depends on the era, it depends on the show. None of this is new. It's just great to see it reinforced again. So I guess it is new, if you haven't thought about it. I guess it is new if you're a newer fan, younger or just newer, and you have finally gone around the block 2 or 3 times, and now you're ready for that next level. It's what we always talk about in Portal 47, when you're ready to deep dive a little more. But that's true of anything. That's true of anything you're a fan of. There's the entry-level fans that are all agog and starry-eyed, whether it's TV or whether it's whatever it is, a game, a sports team, whatever it is you're new into, an author. Then the more you go, the more you want, right? The more you dig. And sometimes we even surprise ourselves on a rewatch or a reread, because we realize that we have the wonderful warm feelings, like say it was your uncle or your mom or your big brother or your big sister, somebody who got you into whatever your first Trek was. And you even keep up with the franchise, but you always keep your first in that state, in that rosy state, right? Or if it's a show that you didn't care for at the time, like people didn't care for DS9 or Voyager at the time, being convinced to go give them a second try because the world has shifted, because you've shifted, because your life has shifted, and now you're able to see it with new technology, much less with a new point of view in your own life, or someone else's point of view comes into your life and you realize it's worth a new look. That's totally human. That's totally expected. Sometimes we'd still let it trip us up. Sometimes we let it surprise us. And you know what? For most things in life, that's true of anything. We look at anything through the eyes of our childhood. Something had happened in our family. Something happened to people around us. We may have been ecstatic. We may have been very hurt. We may have been traumatized. And the passage of time and acquiring some life experience ourselves and going through a mill maybe we're fine, but we take that one little moment out and look at it again with the new eyes of maturity, with life experience, with having gone through something like that ourselves. And it can mean all the difference. Suddenly, the power of that moment is not so much with the negatives of life. It can, there's a sad moment where it can even be the positives. Have you ever gone back to your old childhood home and realized how small it was now, or how great something was when you were a kid? And it's not ruining it, but it certainly alters your perspective to look at it with adult eyes, to look at it with a changed world. Maybe all the pasture around your house is now a huge, housing addition or a big strip mall. That kind of changes the tone too. But the best thing is nobody can take away those memories, right? That and deal with it. I can live with it. So it's just that passage of time. On the production side, it's what I call the pendulum. You've heard me talk about it before. The pendulum of Trek, how the outside world affects the production, right? As well as our perception of it. I promised you two events. That is the other side of the coin here. Apart from being part of that live panel on Lockdown Con, and hey, you can go back and see it. It's the Saturday streaming program. Right now, it's all one big day-long stream, but if you go to about 3 hours and 50 minutes, we were the fourth panel. If you go to the YouTube channel for Lockdown Con, Saturday programming, if you want to listen to this, because it was a great discussion. Well, that was that. The twin to this actually happened the day before, and it's been all over social media. It's been all over social media for a week, but yes, the Voyager documentary is filming. I'm involved to the extent that I'm going to help with some of the tour perks. If people got in and got some of the away missions to LA, there's a couple of the days that I'm going to be leading or co-leading some of the film site tours, which is, Trekland Treks, what we do, especially now that we can hopefully open up things again for touring. But also I was, yes, lucky enough to be in as a interviews person. But more than that, my wife Janet got to come along too. She's one that has not shunned the world, but shied away from it as a old time original series fan who got to work on a show before she got the burnout on Voyager, telling stories. And some of you go back to the days when Janet and I did cons together before it became a solo act. It was great to support her and put that out there. And as she kept realizing, as well as myself, as well as those doing the doc, again, our perceptions shift. And I'll just say that, yes, you saw a lot of folks that you wouldn't associate with Voyager being out there, popping up on social media, talking about being on. There's an element for documentary to talk about the effect of Voyager on folks. And you've seen that. A lot of you have seen some of the other faces, especially those connected with newer Star Treks of today. Dr. Aaron, science advisor, Mary Chieffo, the mother Klingon. There are room for overlapping projects and for people talking about the effect of Voyager. And yeah, Nana Visitor peeking in there with Brian Fuller. Nana has a couple of Voyager stories overlapping DS9, so that'll all be, you may have even heard her tell them at cons. I'm not going to spoil anything here, but the overall, what hits me again, and this is something that I need to remember, I came away from Voyager, be careful what you wish for, Lieutenant, you may get it, seeing from basically square 1.2 how the sausage is made for the entire 7 years run. And I just, my frame is Voyager as the great unfulfilled potential that Star Trek had. And I need to get over that. Well, I'll keep that. I'm not going to Soviet encyclopedia that away. It hit me 10, 15 years ago. I think I've talked about this. I intellectually knew this was bound to happen, but it really came face to face with the good that Voyager has done. And yes, of course, I mean what it's done for lifting up all the little girls, all the young women, all the adult women at the time, what it's done for that. And as someone pointed out, Janeway is not only an icon for women everywhere, but for the same way that, Liza Minnelli and her mom, Judy, have been an icon for the gay community and for the gender community, for the LGBTQA. It's one of those things that's not planned, but it's the way it happens. Whenever Star Trek is doing good for somebody, power to it. But the impact that Star Trek is having, not just as a show that's being made in the moment, that had to go 7 years and 26 episodes on a dinky little network. When all that is moot, aside from knowing that's why things are done the way they are, but 20 and 30 years later, none of that has anything to do with the way it's being received now. And Voyager is, even with its share of clinkers and its share of, yes, we can still analyze and critique it, just the way we can the original series, Next Generation, or Discovery. Even with all of that, Voyager's had such a powerful influence on people, on generations, on the young minds, Mr. Scott. And I have to remember that. I said I came face to face with it in a good way at Vegas. It's the same way with the Kelvin movies. I've talked about that a lot. They fulfilled a purpose. If we never have any more of them in the same format, I kind of predicted that. But if they go on for whatever reason and live long and prosper, find a route, and there becomes a real reason to keep producing them, aside from just basic demand, then power to it. Power to it. Any Star Trek, as well as it's done right, and yes, I know people will, there are launching problems aplenty. Sometimes the well-oiled machine has to be restarted. Sometimes the well-oiled machine hits a dry patch. Looking at you, Aquiel. Hey, at least that's what the writers would tell you. But overall, and Jesus, for 55 years, there is something happening out there. If you look at it as a contest and you pull back on the meta level and say, well, Star Trek's faltering because look, we're losing to Marvel. We're losing to Star Wars. Name your franchise. That's not true. Star Trek had a fallow patch, and it's coming roaring back. You can tell we're roaring back because we're crossing over on the radar screens of all the trolls that want to sound off on, the SJWs or whatever, women of color, whatever. It's like the doomsday machine's defense perimeter. When we cross into it, we get shot at. So that's a backhanded compliment for Star Trek being very much in the public eye, I guess. We could do without the negativity there, the pointlessness, the whole, I'm sorry, have you ever watched the show? But one thing my visit to the documentary set did once again was to remind myself and to hear other people talking, people in the crew, some of the other guests talking, some of the folks that worked on the show. When you get sucked into something in the moment, you don't know the power. The original series folks had no idea that we'd be talking about them 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 years later. Talk to any of those guest stars from the original series who had a lifetime as a working actor, whether they ever had real fame or they got to be a regular on a series, had some movie success. But those 2 or 3 days they worked on Star Trek out of the hundreds of roles they had, and that's what they talk about 40 years later, 50 years later. We don't know. It's a good blow for always, just doing your best, whatever it is you do. Do your best, because you never know how it's going to affect anyone. Whether you're on a screen with reruns to come and some yet to be invented technology 50 years, or you're just dealing with the customers at your store, the people you interact with, the folks at whatever your avocation is, or your hobby. You never know when you're going to have an effect on somebody else's life, one-to-one or in a ripple effect. I know that's been a reevaluation of mine. Hopefully we're all doing that as healthy adults, right? As healthy growing human beings. We're reevaluating. Sometimes we get in our ruts and it's comical. Sometimes we get slapped in the face with a revelation. We have not been up to date as well as watching our blinders. That's something I try to preach about. I should have a hashtag for that. But sometimes it's those unexamined blinders are deadly and disastrous. Whether it's racism, misogyny, a whole culture and its war, whatever it is, the unexamined blinders are not a good habit to get into. And that's one thing that not just Star Trek, but all these eras of Star Trek do. And on the cutting edge of technology and presentation and distribution, we have the modern series, we've got the Kurtzman era here, but it's also is what is employed when we go back and look. And anyone who saw the DS9 series documentary knows that Ira tried to be blunt about not giving DS9 a pass on gender issues. Right? Oh, yeah, well, there was Rejoined. But that wasn't good enough, he said. And in hindsight, looking back, that's what we'd all think. Somehow Fire and Ice, Blood and Ice, David Gerrold's story, for whatever reason, did not get made in the very first season, right out of the box of Next Generation. But at least if things get away from us, the point of looking back, honestly, and yes, we love to glorify, we love to celebrate, but there's times when we need to, shed a cold eye. We have to turn a clear eye. A cold eye? A cold stare, roses away, no filtered glasses, a clear-eyed look at what's gone in the past, both for the pluses and the minuses, for the positive and the negatives, because that's how we progress. Not to do that to the extremes is stagnation. I always loved it in high school when people would sign my book. Oh, Larry, stay just the same, stay just like you are. Which is what 18-year-olds write in high school senior yearbooks. And I would always see that and go, you want me to stagnate? And of course, that's not what they meant. It's like when people say stay the way they are, I mean, keep your best qualities. Maybe get rid of the worst ones. Maybe improve on some things, but keep the best qualities. And you know what? That's really what we're asking of each other. That's all we're really asking of ourselves as a country, of a species, of a world. And boy, this got deep all of a sudden. Anyway, I say greetings from that. Yes, a lot's been popping out about the Voyager documentary. People can't wait. It's going to be awesome. I'm sitting here trying to get my own wrangled, and we're working on that with Con of Wrath. But I do not envy this Pandora's box of goodness that Dave Zappone and all his team have unleashed here with Voyager. As incredible as this seems, it may even be a slightly wider scope than even the DS9 documentary was. We'll have to see. I'm not putting any words in anybody's editor. I'm not putting any ideas in anybody's Avid, anybody's Premiere. Hey, everybody, listen, let's wrap this up. I just wanted to say there's nothing like a good panel and a good documentary interview sit down to get you thinking about, the passing parade, how even the things you are sure about, how even the touchstones of your life, even when they're good ones, even when they're positives, are never beyond a rethink and a redo and a realization that everybody else has an opinion. Everybody else had a perception as well. And when we're all civil with each other and having fun, there's nothing like that. It's also the healthy way to keep going forward. So I hope everybody is excited. It's going to be a while. It'll be, at least another year, if not more, for the Voyager doc to be together. They've got more shooting to do. Meanwhile, the Lockdown Con 2 panel is up where you can see it on the Lockdown YouTube channel. But if you want to see the Trek panel, Saturday at about 3 hours, 50 minutes in, and you'll see our shining faces and some of the good stuff we talked about there. That's going to do it for me for the topic today. I need to totally thank, and you should too, all of our wonderful Patreon folks who help bring me Trekland Tuesdays live and everything I'm doing. I'm going to see how the stream was this week. We keep tweaking on it. Meanwhile, I want to thank Blaze K and Robin Wilson and Lawrence Todd and Anna Marie Siegel and Blake Arledge and Jason Porteous and Nathaniel Robinson for being in the TTL club. And then our TTL live wires, Rusty Harold, Halbjorn Gunn Johnson, Jalen Bullock, Gary Williams, Jared Cooper, Mr. Vestek, Robert McLean, and Casey Shafsky. Thank you guys and gals for being part of the Patreon. You can join in too. It's the end of the month. If you jump in now, you can get in on the next call. Patreon does this. Patreon's a place you can go support creatives. Patreon.com IM/Trekland Live. Very simple compared to most folks. $5 and $10 a month. That's it. For the shout out here and for access to our first generation Portal 47 interviews with all the backstage folks. Reminders here real quick. It's the Think Trek Centennial for Gene Roddenberry. I'm offering this tour in mid-October. I need at least 6 people for it to make. We're going to go to Gene's life venues around town with some commentary, and Rod Roddenberry is going to be a guest through part of that. It's the Great Birds Origin Tour LA. It's the Gene Roddenberry Centennial Year. And if you haven't been following, the biggest celebration so far has been online with the Think Trek hashtag and B Trek, C Trek, Do Trek. You can check it out at Roddenberry.com. I'll say that. This is not on a web page. Get in touch with me. We've got some options with and without hotel. So just let me know here in the chat, or get over, especially message me on Facebook or wherever you are. Larry at LarryNemecek.com. Email is always the best. I know the landing page is coming. The website page is coming. It'll be simple, but it's coming. Much closer in, though, the day before Vegas Trek happens, and hopefully we're not going to have a Delta variant virus comeback here in the States. They're advising us here in LA County to wear masks again. All of that to say, we're offering the one-day Valley of Fire Kirk Memorial Tour if you're headed to Vegas. This will be on Tuesday before the con starts on Wednesday, Con Eve. But check it out at the Geek Nation Tours. It's the first tour, the next one up, geeknationtours.com. You can check it out. It's a one-day. Meanwhile, the Trek Files are long gone. And if you didn't live in the UK, you don't know what I'm talking about. But the Trek Files, most of you should know, we're still on our hiatus break for season 6, but all the past 6 seasons are still up there at the Trek Files on Facebook. Please like the page on Facebook. Check out there are some new Roddenberry, and not all of them are Star Trek related podcasts coming. So that's at podcast.roddenberry.com. And meanwhile, yes, for reals, Life Support Live will be back this Saturday. We had a last minute scrub on our delayed day Sunday, but Dr. Ali assures me that his big, and you know how hectic they can be and how draining they are and how unpredictable sometimes a family house move can be. So we're looking forward to being back with you Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. UK time, and 7 Central European time for Life Support Live, going boldly through uncertain times. And I look forward to being back with the live chat with the lifers, just like we're doing here. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe, live or later. Please subscribe. But Larry Nemecek is my simple Twitter. On Facebook, Larry Nemecek's Trekland is my Instagram. I'd love to see you there too. More than that, if you're enjoying where I come from with Trek, and today's was not hard on detail, more on the emo, more on the mindset, which is just as much a part of Star Trek modern day here as anything. And you know what? I've got so many brethren and sistren out here across the web that are hyper diving into details all the time. I saw one the other day. The toxic tubers are still out there. They're not as on the nose, but they're still out there doing to Star Trek. I got sucked into one the other day before I realized where I was, talking about there was no point to trying to do canon. Anyway, continuity. There would be no Star Trek without continuity. Portal47.net. I invite you to go over and take a look at what the Portales and I do every month. This month, our guest is, my God, the last major director from the original series that we have with us, Ralph Sinensky, who is 98 and just amazing. And the Portales and I are going to share an hour with him this week. I'd love for you to share time with the Portales too, and all the features in every monthly package. Okay, portal47.net. Otherwise, everybody, as I started to say, stay healthy. We ain't out of the bag yet, and I'm starting to worry about the Olympics. Some of my colleagues and associates had been worrying about the Olympics in Japan for a long time in light of the pandemic. But here we go. You stay healthy. Do all the things. Stay woke, and I mean check sources. When you're reading, I almost got sucked into a rabbit hole. Don't waste your time. That's what the trolls want more than anything. In short, I'm just saying, trek well, everybody.